The knock came at 3:07 a.m. I know the exact time because I was already awake. I'd been lying in the dark for 2 hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat and the faint drip of a kitchen faucet I kept meaning to fix. I was wide awake and perfectly still, the way you are when your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. And then 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, not frantic, not the panicked hammering of someone in danger. These were the kind of knocks that know you're home, the kind that aren't asking permission. Police. I knew before I opened the door. Something in the quality of it, something in the hour and the heaviness of it, and the way my stomach dropped straight through the mattress. I got up. I pulled on a sweatshirt. I walked to the door and I stood there for just a second. 1 second. With my hand on the lock. Whatever this is, you can handle it. I opened the door. 2 officers. A man and a woman. Both in plain clothes. Detectives, not patrol. The man was tall, mid-40s, with the kind of face that had decided long ago to stop showing what it was thinking. The woman was younger. Sharp eyes. A notepad in her hand, though she wasn't writing in it yet. "Ms. Reeves," the man said. "Kara Reeves." "Yes. I'm Detective Marsh. This is Detective Ewan. May we come in?" "May we come in?" Like it was a question. "What's this about?" I asked. They looked at each other. Just briefly. That particular kind of look. The kind that means we've done this before and it never gets easier. "It's about your neighbor," Detective Marsh said. "Daniel Avery. Do you know him?" "Do I know him?" There's a question. Do I know the man in apartment 4B? The one directly across the hall from mine? Do I know the man I've been silently, furiously, desperately trying not to think about for the past 7 months? "Yes," I said carefully. "I know him." "Can we come inside?" I stepped back. I let them in. "My name is Kara Reeves. I'm 32 years old. I'm a forensic accountant, which means I spend my professional life finding the numbers that people have tried very hard to hide. I am good at patterns. I am good at seeing what doesn't belong. You would think I would have seen what was coming. You would be wrong." I sat on my sofa. The detective sat across from me, and Detective Marsh put a photograph on the coffee table between us. "Have you seen this man before?" he asked. I looked at the photograph. A man I didn't recognize. Late 50s. Heavy set. The photo looked like a still from a security camera, grainy, overexposed. "No," I said. "Who is he?" "His name is Victor Hale," Detective Ewan said. She had a quiet, precise way of speaking, like every word was chosen and placed. "He was found dead earlier tonight, in a car park 3 blocks from this building." The room felt very still. What does that have to do with Daniel? I asked. Another one of those looks. Mr. Avery was the last known person to see Victor Hale alive, Detective Marsh said. "We need to speak with him. We've been knocking on his door for the past 20 minutes. He's not answering. His car is in the garage. His phone goes straight to voicemail." He paused. "You said you know him. When did you last see him?" I thought about lying. "Why would you think about lying, Kara?" "Yesterday evening," I said. "Around 7. We passed each other in the hallway." "Did he seem distressed? Unusual in any way?" "Unusual." I almost laughed. Everything about Daniel Avery had always been unusual to me. "He seemed fine," I said. "Normal." Detective Ewan wrote something in her notepad. "Ms. Reeves," she said, not looking up. "How well do you know Mr. Avery?" And that was the question, wasn't it? That was the question that opened everything. Let me tell you about Daniel Avery. He moved into 4B 14 months ago. November. I remember because the moving van arrived in the middle of a thunderstorm and I watched from my peephole as he carried boxes in by himself. No friends, no help, no one. Just him and the rain and a quiet, unhurried efficiency that I found immediately unsettling. He was tall, dark hair, slightly too long. The kind of face that looked like it had been arranged for a purpose. Angular, still, beautiful in a way that felt almost accidental. Like he hadn't decided to look like that. like it had simply happened to him. He knocked on my door the evening he moved in. "I'm across the hall," he said. When I opened it, his voice was low and even. "Daniel." I wanted to introduce myself. That was it. No apology for the late hour. No small talk about the building or the neighborhood. Just, "I'm Daniel. I'm across the hall." I told him my name. We shook hands. His grip was brief and firm, and I felt it in my shoulder for reasons I couldn't explain. He went back inside. I closed my door and stood in the hallway of my own apartment and thought, well. Over the months that followed, we built what I can only describe as a relationship made entirely of almost conversations in the elevator that ended one floor too soon. Almost smiles in the morning before coffee had made either of us fully human. He brought in my packages when I was traveling for work, twice, and left them outside my door with notes, so brief they bordered on cryptic. "Package left for you. D." That was it. D. Like his last name was irrelevant. I found myself rearranging the times I left for work by 15 minutes, telling myself it had nothing to do with the fact that I'd noticed he usually left at 8. I found myself caring what I looked like in the hallway. I found myself cataloging everything I knew about him, in the way you do when you're trying to solve something, when you're treating a person like a puzzle because the alternative, which is admitting you have feelings for them, is terrifying. What I knew about Daniel Avery. He worked irregular hours, sometimes gone by 6 in the morning, sometimes not leaving until noon. He had one visitor I'd ever seen, a woman once, who knocked on his door and left 7 minutes later looking like she'd been told something she hadn't wanted to hear. He ran at night. I knew because I heard his door sometimes at 11, midnight, 1 in the morning, the quiet click of it, and then later the soft return. He never used the elevator after dark. Always the stairs. He read. I could see the spines of books in his apartment sometimes through the gap under his door. A yellow strip of lamplight and the shadow of pages. He never had music on. His apartment was always quiet. 3 months after he moved in, I made the mistake that changed everything between us. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in the hallway with a grocery bag that was losing the structural integrity of its bottom, slowly, catastrophically, in the way that grocery bags do. When Daniel came out of his door and caught a falling jar of pasta sauce with one hand without breaking stride, he handed it back to me. We were very close together for a moment, close enough that I could see the particular gray of his eyes, not blue-gray or green-gray, just gray, like water before a storm. You should use the canvas bags, he said. I always forget them, I said. I'll get you some. And then, before I could respond to that, have dinner with me. It wasn't phrased as a question. Not rudely, not as a demand, just as a statement. Have dinner with me? Like the idea had arrived fully formed, and he'd simply announced it. Say no, said the careful, pattern-reading part of my brain. You don't know this person. You don't know anything about this person. Okay, I said. The dinner was at a small Italian place 8 blocks away. We walked there. He didn't fill the silence unnecessarily, and I found, to my surprise, that neither did I. We talked about small things and then, over wine, we talked about real things, the kind of things you tell someone when you've decided, consciously or not, to let them matter. I told him about my job, about the peculiar satisfaction of forensic accounting, of finding the hidden number, the wrong entry, the audit trail that doubles back on itself. You look for lies, he said. I look for the shape of lies, I corrected. The lie is usually obvious once you know the shape of it. He looked at me for a moment with those gray eyes. I'll have to remember that, he said. I didn't know what he meant. I should have asked. Instead, I refilled my wine glass and told myself it was just a turn of phrase. We walked home in the cold. At my door, he paused. I thought for one breathless second. I had a good evening, he said. Quietly, carefully. Me too. He nodded once. He crossed the hall. He went inside. And I stood in my doorway, alone, feeling like I'd been on the edge of something and stepped back from it, except I hadn't stepped back. He had. And I didn't know why. I didn't know then what I know now. If I had, But that's not how it works, is it? You don't get to see the shape of things until you're already inside them. The months between that dinner and the night the police knocked were the most confusing of my adult life. We fell into something. I'm not sure what to call it. Not a relationship. He never let it fully become that, though there were moments, so many moments, when I could feel him wanting to. Not a friendship. It was too charged for that. Too full of things we weren't saying. It was a tension with a life of its own. He'd knock on my door sometimes with coffee. Just 2 cups, no explanation. And we'd stand in the hallway and drink it, and talk about nothing. He came to help when my bookshelf collapsed at 10 on a Wednesday night. He fixed it in 30 minutes and didn't ask why I owned that many books about financial crime. Once, in the elevator, he put his hand very briefly against the small of my back to let me go first through the door, and then looked away as though he hadn't done it. I replayed that for days, weeks, but anytime I pushed, anytime I tried to move us from this orbit into something with a name, he would pull back, not unkindly, almost painfully gently, but back, always back, to some invisible line he'd drawn between us that I couldn't see and couldn't cross. Why? I asked him once. Directly? I'd had enough wine to be direct. Because I like you, he said, as though that explained everything. That's not an answer. He looked at me for a long time. No, he agreed. It isn't. And he changed the subject. I should have pushed harder. I should have understood then that the things he wasn't saying were louder than the things he was. Back to the detectives. Back to my living room at 3 a.m. and a photograph of a dead man named Victor Hale on my coffee table. How well do you know Mr. Avery? Detective Ewan had asked. Well enough, I said. He's a neighbor. We've had dinner. We're friendly. Do you know what he does for work? I hesitated. He's in security consulting, I said. That's what he'd told me. Private security consulting. The detectives exchanged that look again. Ms. Reeves, Detective Marsh said. He leaned forward slightly. I'm going to tell you something because I think it will help you understand the seriousness of what we're looking at, and because I think you deserve to know who you've been living across the hall from. He paused. Daniel Avery is not his real name. The room went quiet in a way that rooms don't usually go quiet. Like all the ambient sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the drip of the faucet, just stopped. I'm sorry. His legal name is Daniel Averin. He's 37 years old. For the past 4 years, he has been working as an undercover operative, contracted through a federal task force focused on organized crime. Specifically, financial networks, the kind that move money through shell companies and offshore accounts. Marsh paused again. The kind that your work, as a forensic accountant, occasionally intersects with. I stared at him. Victor Hale, Detective Ewan said, was a mid-level money manager for an organized crime syndicate. He was found dead tonight, and the task force Daniel works for has lost contact with him as of 11 p.m. Lost contact. My brain, the part trained to find the shape of things, was running very fast and very cold. You think something happened to him? I said. We don't know, Marsh said carefully. We know that Victor Hale is dead, and that Daniel was embedded in Hale's network, and that his cover may have been blown. Or, I said slowly, you think Daniel killed him? Neither detective answered immediately. That was its own answer. No, that is not. Think, Kara. Think clearly. 14 months of small moments. The coffee in the hallway and the fixed bookshelf and the hand at the small of my back. His voice when he talked about things he cared about. His face when he thought I wasn't watching. He is not a killer. Is he? Do you actually know? Or do you know the shape he decided to show you? There's something else, Detective Ewan said. She was watching me carefully now. Victor Hale's organization has been under surveillance for 2 years. In reviewing those records tonight, we found something unexpected. She opened a folder on the coffee table. Your name came up. My name. In connection with an audit you conducted 18 months ago, she continued. A company called Meridian Freight Solutions. You flagged irregularities in their accounts and reported them to the regulatory authority. Do you remember that case? Yes. I said carefully. Of course I remembered. It had been one of the largest referrals I'd ever made. $11 million in suspicious transactions, routed through what looked like legitimate freight invoicing. Meridian Freight Solutions, Ewan said, was a front company. Victor Hale's front company. Your audit began the chain of events that led to this investigation. Which means Hale knew my name, I said. My voice came out very flat. Yes. And Daniel, Avrin, was embedded in Hale's network. Yes. I looked at the coffee table, at the photograph of the dead man, at the folder with my name in it. He moved in across the hall from me on purpose, I said. Not a question. I already knew. We believe so, Marsh said. I believe so too. The shape of it, the shape I should have seen, was suddenly perfectly clear. That's why he brought me coffee. That's why he knocked on my door. That's why he pulled back every single time. He wasn't falling for me and stopping himself out of caution. He was a man doing a job. And I was part of the job. They left at 4:30 in the morning with a request that I contact them immediately if Daniel reached out, and an assurance that this was, for my safety, a matter of highest priority. I closed the door. I stood in the middle of my apartment, and I took inventory. Not of the situation. I could do that later, when my brain had restructured itself around this new information. I took inventory of my feelings. The forensic accountant in me applied the same methodology to my own interior that I'd apply to a set of corrupted books. What do I actually know? I know he moved in across the hall not by coincidence, but by design. I know that his name, the name I whispered in my apartment sometimes, stupidly, alone, was not even his name. I know that every cup of coffee in the hallway, every 5-minute conversation, every almost moment in the elevator may have been professional calculation dressed up as human warmth. What do I feel? Humiliated. A hot, clean humiliation. The kind that comes not from what someone did to you but from how completely you didn't see it. What else? I almost didn't let myself answer that. Afraid for him. Against every sensible instinct I possessed. The thing that sat underneath the humiliation and the cold shock was fear. Not for myself. For him. Because whatever had happened tonight, whether Daniel had run, or been compromised, or done something the detective suspected him of doing, he was out there somewhere in the dark city and the task force had lost contact with him and nobody seemed to know where he was. And I care about that. God help me, I still care about that. I made coffee at 5 in the morning and I sat at my kitchen table and I went back over every conversation we'd ever had, holding each one up to the new light. The dinner. You look for lies. I'll have to remember that. He'd known, even then. He'd been embedded in a financial crime network and he'd sat across from me and listened to me describe exactly how I worked and he'd filed it away. The shape of lies. He'd known the shape of his own lie, sitting right across from me. The bookshelf. The packages. The morning coffees. How much of it was real? Here's the thing about working in forensic accounting that nobody tells you. The hardest accounts to crack are never the obviously falsified ones. The hardest ones are the hybrid books, where some entries are real and some are fabricated, all woven together so seamlessly that the truth and the lie start to look the same. What if it was both? What if the lie was the reason he came, and the truth was what happened after? What if he started as a job and I became something else to him? I hated myself for wanting that to be true. I hated how much I wanted it. At 6:15, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. Kara. Daniel's voice. I didn't speak for a full 3 seconds. I know the police were at your door, he said. I know what they told you. I need you to listen to me. You're surveilling my apartment. My voice came out steadier than I felt. The building has a security camera in the lobby. I'm watching the feed. A pause. Are you alone? Yes. Are you okay? Are you okay? From the man who had spent 14 months lying to my face. Don't ask me that, I said. Tell me what's happening. A silence. I could hear his breathing. Faster than usual. He was moving somewhere. Outside. I could tell. Traffic sounds. Faint. Victor Hale is dead, he said. I know. I didn't kill him. I didn't say you did. The people he worked for think I did. Or they're going to, by this morning, once they realize how he died and who was with him last. His voice was controlled, but I could hear something running underneath it. Not panic. Something colder than panic. Calculation. Why would they think it was you? Because someone set it up that way. Someone in his organization who knows I'm a plant, who wanted to use Hale's death to frame me and blow my cover at the same time. A beat. It's clean. Elegant. Even. I'd almost admire it if I weren't the one getting buried. Who? I don't know yet. That's the problem. I breathed. I pressed my back against the kitchen wall and I looked at the ceiling and I tried to think clearly. Daniel. Avrin, he said. Quietly. My name is Daniel Avrin. I know that too. The detective told me. They told me all of it. I paused. They told me why you moved in across the hall. The silence that followed was different from his operational silences. This one had something fragile in it. Kara. Was any of it real? I asked. My voice only cracked on the last word. I hated it, but I let it. He was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. All of it, he said finally. Every single thing. That's not possible. I know it's not something you can take on faith right now. I know you have no reason to. I have every reason not to, I said. You lied to me for 14 months. Yes. No defense. No qualifier. Just, yes. What do you want, Daniel? Another pause. I need your help, he said. Of all the things I had imagined him saying, it wasn't that. What? The financial network. The money trails that connect Hale's organization to the people above him. I've been gathering them for 2 years. I have records. Copies of accounts, transaction logs, transfer codes. The kind of evidence that would end this entire network. He paused. But it's encoded, buried in a structure that takes forensic accounting to read. My handler is compromised. I don't know how deep the leak goes on the task force side. I don't trust my own organization right now. So you want me? I said slowly. You cracked Meridian in 8 days, he said. You found $11 million that 3 auditors before you had missed. You're better at this than anyone I've ever seen. I'm a civilian. I know. I'm a civilian and I'm the audit trail that connects me to Hale's organization, which means if the wrong people find out I'm helping you. I know, he said again. That's why I'm asking. Not telling. Asking. You can say no. You should probably say no. Say no, Kara. He lied to you. He fabricated a friendship to stay close to an asset. He looked you in the eye 100 times and smiled and let you feel something for him, and it was professional calculation. Say no. But here was the shape of it. Victor Hale was dead. Daniel's cover was blown or close to it. Someone inside either the criminal network or the task force, or both, had engineered this. And the evidence that could unravel everything sat buried in financial records that the man across the hall needed a forensic accountant to read. And I had already flagged Meridian. Whether I helped Daniel or not, my name was already in the file. I was already in this. Where are you? I asked. He was in a car park on the south side of the city, the kind with bad lighting and no cameras, because of course he'd checked for cameras. I drove there in the gray pre-dawn, my headlights cutting through the fog, telling myself with every mile that I was a rational adult, making a reasonable risk assessment. I was absolutely not thinking about his voice when he said, all of it. Every single thing. He was leaning against a concrete pillar when I pulled in. He looked the same and different. The same face, the same impossible stillness, but stripped of the building and the hallway and the comfortable context. Out here, he looked like what he was. Someone who knew exactly how to stand in the dark without being seen. He walked to my car, got in the passenger seat without being invited, which somehow I expected. We looked at each other. In the flat light of the car park, I could see how tired he was. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The other kind. You came, he said. Don't make it more than it is, I said. Show me what you have. He put a hard drive on the dashboard. Small. Black. 2 years of financial records, he said. Transaction logs, shell company structures, beneficiary codes. The real owners of the network are in there, 3 layers above Hale. If you can decode the structure, we can build a case that doesn't depend on my testimony. He paused. Which right now is worth nothing, because I'm either a suspect or a blown asset or both. I picked up the drive. I turned it over in my hands. Why did you really move in across the hall? I asked, not looking at him. Upbeat. Operationally, because you were a person of interest. Your audit had disturbed Hale's finances, and we needed to know if you were connected to them or just a threat to them. His voice was even, careful. You were clean. I confirmed that within the first month. And after that? After that, he said quietly. I had no operational reason to stay. I looked at him then. But you stayed, I said. I stayed. He held my gaze. That is the part that had nothing to do with the job. That is the part that is entirely, completely real. And I know you have no reason to believe that. I know I've handed you every reason to walk out of this car park and call Marsh and tell him where I am and let this be someone else's problem. I'm aware, I said. Why didn't you? Why didn't I? Because I am a woman who looks for the shape of things. And the shape I'd been studying for 14 months. The deliberate way he chose words. The careful way he held himself back. The look on his face in the elevator before he remembered to look away. That shape didn't read like a man running a long con. That shape read like a man who had gotten in over his head in a completely different way than he'd planned. Give me 4 hours, I said. I put the drive in my bag. Don't call me. Don't come near my building. And don't assume this means anything beyond the fact that I'm better at this than whoever else you've got. He looked at me for a moment, then nodded. I started the car. Kara. His voice was low. Be careful. I'm always careful, I said. That's how I find what's hidden. I have a rule about forensic work. You don't bring assumptions to the ledger. You bring only what the numbers tell you. I sat at my kitchen table at 7 in the morning with Daniel's hard drive connected to my laptop, and I applied that rule. I left everything else, what I felt, what I feared, the memory of his voice saying all of it, outside the door of the work. And I went in. The structure was clever. I'll give whoever built it that. The accounts were layered across 6 jurisdictions, routed through a cascade of shell entities with names designed to sound boring. The kind of names you stop reading after the 3rd one because your brain registers logistics company, consulting firm, holding entity and moves on. The transfers use split coding, amounts deliberately fragmented to stay below reporting thresholds. It was meticulous, patient, the kind of financial architecture that takes years to build. But here's what patient architects forget. Patience leaves a pattern. And patterns have shapes. I started at the endpoints, the final destinations of the money, and worked backward. Not through the official company names, which were meaningless, but through the transaction timing. When money moved mattered as much as where. Synchronized transfers across supposedly unrelated entities told me which ones were actually controlled by the same hand. By 8:30 I had the spine of it. By 9:40 I had the names. 3 individuals. Not Hale. Hale was the midpoint. The visible layer. 3 individuals sitting above him. Invisible in the structure, who had been receiving the consolidated proceeds of the network for at least 7 years. One of them was a name I recognized. One of them made my blood go cold. Senator Marcus Aldrin. 3 terms. Veteran of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Public champion of law enforcement funding and... I opened a browser tab, my hands very steady. A key figure in the federal task force that had contracted Daniel Averin for the past 4 years. He wasn't just in the network. He was why Daniel's cover had been blown. He was the leak inside the task force. And he was the reason Victor Hale was dead. The shape of it. God. The shape of it. Hale hadn't been killed because of Daniel. He'd been killed because Hale had started to become a liability. Because the audit trail I'd begun 18 months ago had disturbed the network enough that Aldrin needed to close the gap. Hale dead. Daniel framed. Both loose ends tied, neatly, by someone who had been sitting on the task force oversight committee for 3 years, with full access to every operative, every case file, every name. I sat back from my laptop. I thought about Aldrin's face from television. That particular kind of face, assured, avuncular, the face of someone who has been believed for so long they've forgotten what being disbelieved feels like. Then I picked up my phone and I called Daniel. "I have it," I said when he picked up. A pause. All of it. The full structure. 3 principles above hail. Shell company framework. Transaction logs going back 7 years. And a name you're not going to like. I told him. The silence on his end was very long and very particular. The kind of silence that comes after something confirms a fear you'd had but hadn't let yourself believe. "Aldrin," he said, finally, almost to himself. "You suspected." I suspected the leak was senior. "I didn't," he stopped. "Does Marsh know?" "Marsh reports to the task force. If the task force is compromised, he might be compromised too. Or he might be clean and not know it." A pause. "We can't go to Marsh. We need to go to someone," I said. "I have enough to build a criminal referral. But it needs to land somewhere that Aldrin can't reach." "I know someone," Daniel said. "A federal prosecutor. Outside the task force structure. She's been watching Aldrin's committee for 2 years on an unrelated matter. If we can get this to her." "Can you trust her?" "More than anyone else I've got right now," he said. Then, quieter. "More than I deserve." "Don't." I said it sharply. "Don't go philosophical right now. Can she receive encrypted files?" "Yes." "Then give me the address." It took me 90 minutes to package what I had. The full document trail, the decoded transaction structure, a 12-page analysis with annotations precise enough for a federal filing. The kind of work I was trained to do. The kind I was made to do. I sent it at 11:47 in the morning. And then I sat back and I waited. The call from the prosecutor's office came at 2 in the afternoon. She confirmed receipt. She asked 3 technical questions that told me she was genuinely competent and not just performing competence. She told me that what I had sent was, in her words, extraordinarily thorough, and that she would need to verify several points before she could act on it, but that I should stay close to my phone. I stayed close to my phone. At 4:15, Marcus Aldrin was contacted by federal agents at his Washington office. I learned this from the news, not from anyone official. A brief alert on my phone. Senate Intelligence Committee member Marcus Aldrin questioned in connection with federal financial crime investigation. I read it 3 times. Then I went to my kitchen and I made tea and I stood at the window and I watched the city go about its ordinary afternoon. Daniel knocked on my door at 6 o'clock that evening. He'd apparently been cleared to return to his apartment, the active threat resolved, his cover no longer a concern since the investigation was now overt and moving fast. He stood in the hallway in the space he'd occupied for 14 months, and he looked at me, and neither of us pretended this was a normal Tuesday. "You have your apartment back," I said. "Yes." "Your real name?" "Yes." "And the case you've been building for 2 years." "Because of you." His voice was quiet. "That case was going to collapse, Kara. Without what you found this morning, Aldrin walks, I'm a suspect, and the network rebuilds with a new face." "I'm aware. I did the math." "You did more than the math." I leaned against my doorframe. I crossed my arms. I looked at him. This man I thought I knew, who I had known only partially, who had moved in across from me with professional intentions, and somewhere along the way had become something I was still trying to classify. "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I need a straight answer." "Yes." The dinner. The coffee in the hallway. Coming to fix my bookshelf at 10 at night. Was there a single moment in any of it where you made a choice based on something that wasn't the job? He held my gaze without flinching. "The coffee was the job," he said. "The first dinner, I told myself it was the job." A beat. By the second week I knew it wasn't. Every morning after that was a choice I made for entirely the wrong professional reasons. "Which were?" "That I wanted to see you," he said simply. That was it. No operational rationale. I just wanted to see you. I looked at him for a long moment. "That's a terrible answer," I said. Coming from someone whose job is surveillance. I know. It's also the only answer I would have believed. He was quiet, watching me. I'm angry, I said. I want to be clear about that. I'm going to be angry for a while. About the lies and the name and the fact that I spent 7 months feeling like an idiot for caring about someone who was running an operation in my hallway. You were never an idiot, he said immediately, and with a firmness that surprised me. You were the only person in this entire situation who was exactly what you appeared to be. That's not idiocy. It's the rarest thing I've encountered in 4 years of this work. I held that for a moment. Daniel Averin, I said, trying his real name out loud. He went very still when I said it, like the sound of it caught him somewhere unguarded. That's who you actually are. Yes. I don't know him. No, he agreed. But you could. Senator Marcus Aldrin was formally charged 6 weeks later. The indictment named him on 17 counts including racketeering, obstruction of federal investigation, and conspiracy in connection with Victor Hale's death. The charges covered 7 years of criminal activity hidden behind a career built on the very legislation designed to stop it. Poetic justice, someone called it, in a column I read at my kitchen table. I folded the newspaper. I thought about the shape of it. I went back to work the week after everything happened. My clients were the same. The accounts were the same. The work of finding what's hidden, the wrong entries, the double back trails, the numbers that tell a different story than the people who arranged them intended, was the same. But I was not the same. I sat in the car park. I drove across the city at 6 in the morning. I decoded a criminal network while the sun came up, because a man I thought I knew asked me to, and I believed, against every forensic instinct I possessed, that the real thing was in there somewhere, buried underneath the lie. I was right. I hate that I was right. It would be cleaner if I'd been wrong. But I wasn't. Daniel and I had coffee in the hallway 3 days after he came back. The same hallway. The same 2 cups. The same, and not. What happens now? I asked. With the work. With the task force. I'm done with undercover, he said. 4 years is long enough to live inside a name that isn't yours. He paused. I've requested a transition to a consulting role. Operational analysis. No more embedding. Will they let you? After what came out of this case, they'll let me do almost anything I ask for. He looked into his coffee cup. I'm asking for something boring. An office. Normal hours. That's a significant change. Yes. He looked up at me. I have reasons. I have reasons. Said in the same way he'd once said have dinner with me. Like the thing behind the words was larger than the words themselves. Are you going to tell me those reasons? I asked. He looked at me steadily. When you're ready to hear them. I'm going to tell you something I've thought about a lot in the months since. We are all, in our way, living at least partially behind a surface. The version of ourselves we show the world is curated, not necessarily falsified, but selected, edited. We decide what to present and what to protect. The question isn't whether we hide things. We all do. The question is whether, when the surface is removed, the thing underneath is worth the wait. I am a woman who finds the hidden numbers, who looks for the shapes that other people miss. I spent 14 months living across the hall from a man who was, professionally, doing the same thing I do, looking for what's concealed, reading the patterns, following the money to where it turns into truth. I should have seen him coming. The irony is not lost on me. But maybe that's the point. Maybe even the people best trained to see things clearly are not immune to being seen themselves. Maybe the shape of a real thing and the shape of a performed thing look exactly the same, until the 3 a.m. knock comes, and everything gets stripped back to its foundations, and you find out what's actually holding the structure up. What was holding mine up, I discovered, was stronger than I'd thought. And his, the part that was real, turned out to be exactly the part I'd been trying to figure out for 14 months. There's a canvas bag hanging on my kitchen door handle. He left it outside my apartment 2 days after we had that last hallway coffee. No note. No explanation. Just a bag. 4 of them. Actually, good quality. The kind that holds weight. You should use the canvas bags, he'd said to me. standing in a hallway. Before any of this, before the lies and the dead man and the senator, and the evidence I cracked at my kitchen table while the city slept. He'd said it then. He remembered. "I'll get you some." He'd said that too. I stood in my kitchen and I looked at those bags for a long time. And then I laughed. Quietly, to myself, in the way you laugh when something is equal parts infuriating and tender, and too complicated to feel any single way about. The knock came at 3:07 a.m. They told me it wasn't about me. They were wrong. It was about me the whole time. It just took everything falling apart to see the shape of it.